Welcome to Direct Approach with Wayne Moorehead, an exclusive podcast brought to you by Direct Selling News. If you're a direct selling executive looking to next level your strategy, marketing, and brand, you're in the right place. Host Wayne Moorehead, a DSU audience favorite, interviews some of the leading marketers and innovators in direct selling to help your marketing and branding teams motivate the field, inspire customers, and further your brand's reach and impact. In today's episode, Wayne is joined by Dan Macuga, Chief Communications and Marketing Officer of one of the channel's legendary brands, USANA. USANA ranked number 14 on the 2021 DSN Global 100 list with $1.35 billion in revenue. Dan is responsible for USANA's global brand and reputation management implemented through strategic marketing, communications, and public relations initiatives. Dan oversees multiple departments at USANA, including marketing, studios, creative, customer service, public and athlete relations, social media, and communications. Wayne and Dan share their philosophies on keeping all customer and distributor communications consistent, coordinated, and under one cohesive umbrella. Dan also shares how USANA utilizes surveys and focus groups to help learn what customers really want. And spoiler alert, it's not what you would expect. They'll also discuss the increasing importance of reputation management and their insights on why crafting a simple, streamlined customer experience is imperative to how consumers shop today. Bottom line, it's the best way to remove barriers to your business. Before we dive into the interview, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Your brand can live in the hearts and minds of all kinds of people in many places. Today's marketplace is driven by storytelling and personal connections made with brands like yours. Now Tech provides you the future of marketing through a beautifully designed video and e-commerce suite. Now's video commerce technology gives your customers a truly seamless buying experience, which increases your cart value and boosts sales. Did you know? Viewers retain 95% of a video's message. 96% of shoppers rely on product videos when making a buying decision. 84% of people say they've been convinced to buy after watching a brand's video presentation. A video commerce customer reported a 358% increase in customer acquisition and 230% revenue growth. Storytelling and personal connections have always been at the heart of successful direct selling companies. Our video technology gives your brand the opportunity to influence, teach, and inspire the world. Now Tech, proven technology from a trusted partner with 35 years of experience. Let's talk 310-428-9936 or email us at info@now-tech.com.
Before we begin the interview, we want to invite all active direct selling corporate executives to the channel's premier educational event, the Fall Direct Selling University Hybrid Event. Join 1,500 of your executive peers this October 14th and 15th in Plano, Texas, for 2 days with the biggest names and the boldest approaches. Executives can attend in person or watch via live stream. Both options are available free of charge, thanks in part to our 25-plus sponsors. Direct Selling University, also known as DSU, is the largest gathering of direct selling executives in the channel, where industry frontrunners and experts tackle the trends and topics that matter the most to direct selling executives right now in a market that's shifting at lightning speed. You'll learn tangible ideas and applications for your business from over 30 speakers, representing more than $20 billion in combined revenue and billions in year-over-year growth. Don't miss out on the stories and insights you can only get at DSU that can help you and your team achieve new levels of success. Register for free today at dsu2021.com. That's DSU and the numerals 2021.com. Now please help me welcome your host, Wayne Moorehead, and today's guest, Dan Macuga, Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at USANA.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Direct Approach podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Moorehead, and I'm very excited today that we are joined by the Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at USANA, Dan Macuga. Dan, welcome to Direct Approach.
Thanks, Wayne. Looking forward to today.
Yeah, I have as well. Again, especially, you've been in direct selling for a lot of years. I won't put maybe a number on it. As we start getting there, we don't like as many numbers put on the length of our careers. But you've had a great career in direct selling, and you're also an officer at one of the very few public direct selling companies. So you offer a really unique and important perspective, I think. And so I'm really excited to kind of dig in on a few key topics. So again, let's jump in. So help the listeners, help me understand a little bit more about you and the path that led you into direct selling and to USANA, where you're at today.
Well, this is probably not your traditional path, but prior to USANA, I worked for the Chrysler Corporation for 15 years and did a lot of things from customer service to marketing, sales, obviously. And it was one of those jobs where I got to work with entrepreneurs to grow their business, help them attract new consumers or customers, and then work with them to provide an exceptional customer experience at the dealership level. So it was kind of a unique approach. I had known our founder, Dr. Myron Wentz, and his son Dave, since my days back in college. I knew
that's great.
Quite well. And, they started this company back in 92 when we were still, I was getting into my job. They were doing their thing. And listen, I was in a job playing with cars. And so that was a lot of fun and was enjoying myself. But they kept trying to get me to come work at USANA and help them get this company going. And I really didn't have any interest because I was having so much fun and I was enjoying what I was doing. And looking back and looking at the financial success of the company and the growth it's had, maybe that was a mistake to wait as long as I did. But one day I got, I was talking with my wife and I said, maybe I just need to go check this thing out. And so I flew out here to Salt Lake City and came to meet with people just to see what the company was like. Dave said, just come and look at the company. I said, all right, I'll come look at it. And I walked in the door and he said, okay, you're not allowed to talk to anybody until you take a tour of the building. I'm like, take a tour? What? I'm here to talk to people. He says, nope, don't talk to anyone, go do it. And so I did it. And we manufacture our products here. And I had never seen that in action. And it was something that just blew me away. And to see the attention to detail, the way that the company was run, I understood why he had me do that first. And once I sat down with him and afterwards and started talking, it kind of changes the perspective. And I think a lot of companies, as they invite their associates and their customers in to see what they do, it changes it. It's very unique in the way that you interact with the company you're purchasing from. You don't go to Walmart or Target and get a tour on how the thing's made before you buy it. But in our space, we have that unique ability to do so. So once I did that and I started to meet people, including our current chairman and CEO, Kevin Guest, I was like, man, these are really good people. And it was an interesting conversion, but I'll simplify it for you. Working in the car business, we would make cars, we would sell them to dealers. The dealers would sell them to customers and make money. We build a product, we give it to distributor network. The distributor network sells it, they get a commission. The basic business principles were there, and it was a great transition for me. It seems odd to go from cars to vitamins, but it worked out. And it's been, 15 years here, just about here at USANA, and it's been just a great ride, but an interesting road to it, I will say.
Yeah, that is a really interesting path into direct selling and to USANA, and some interesting corollaries too between, I think, both channels. Working kind of with entrepreneurs, kind of initially to grow their businesses, to provide better customer experiences, and also kind of really working directly with that distribution channel, which for direct selling obviously is our distributors. Yeah, were you expecting as many kind of corollaries there as there probably is?
More become evident as each year goes on. It's fascinating to look back on how we dealt with that. And you're right. And we'll probably dig into them later, knowing the topics we're going to talk about, but just looking at the importance of that customer experience. What's the role of the manufacturer or the brand itself? How that factors into working within an independent distributor network. There's a dynamic there that has to be, it's delicate, I guess is probably the best word for it. You have to make sure you're not crossing the lines, but when they work together, it does amazing things. And we're seeing a lot of that those opportunities. And I think, yes, bringing that unique perspective, I think made a difference. And the thing I'll tell you is my wife and I, when we first got married, we dabbled in direct sales. We had a creative memories business.
Oh, great.
I was horrible at making picture books, but we managed the inventory, we managed the business, and we made some money, and we understood, that it wasn't a full-time thing, but it was a supplemental business that you could achieve what you wanted. And so we did that for many, many years. And it was another perspective that didn't play in until I was here to go, okay, I know how that worked. I've been in those shoes. I just have had some unique perspectives, and I think that's really made it more interesting for me.
Yeah, that is interesting. And, I think one of the key attributes for any marketer to have is empathy. And, being a distributor, working, kind of on the front lines there, that had to give you a tremendous amount of empathy and insight into the distributor experience and, the challenges that they face, the needs that they might have. A lot of people, I'd say most people probably, in your role, don't ever get that experience. They kind of, observe from the cheap seats a little bit, trying to look in and experience distributors at more of the observation level. But that's really cool that you got that experience with your wife. Really cool.
Yeah, it was, and I'll tell you the other thing from looking back at that too, you're right. You do understand the trials and tribulations of owning your own little business.
Yeah.
But also appreciating the fact that there was, the home office, so to speak, or the mothership that was there to back you up. Really understanding that dynamic because you're working together. It's an interesting way to set yourself up that provides a perspective that is certainly valuable.
Yeah, truly is a partnership. Again, what a unique perspective to have coming in. So let's begin kind of by zooming out and kind of talking about direct selling at the 50,000 foot level. So, a few years ago, a lot of us were at different events and kind of looking around and realizing like a lot of us were flat. A lot of the companies were pretty flat, looking for growth in a lot of places. And I think, there was kind of, whispers that each of us would, kind of discuss at events, like, are you experiencing the same thing? Are you experiencing? And then realizing it was kind of, a larger, macro dynamic that was happening in the channel. And then, over the last couple of years, really incredible tailwinds. A lot of companies have been experiencing explosive growth, not just, high single digits or double digits, but some in the hundreds of percentages. As far as growth, it's been incredible. Do you see this growth continuing or even a level of this growth continuing? And if so, what will be kind of those key drivers?
That's a good one, because that is really the hot topic.
Sorry, that's a lot there. Yeah.
That's a lot to process. But let me try to break it down. And if I miss anything, you can fill it in for me here. But I think if I were to boil it down to just a simple phrase, the continued success would come down to lessons learned, right? Because I think what you found was prior to COVID, I'm going to use that as an example. Where were you as a company looking forward dynamically in your business model? Or were you stagnant? Because if you were stagnant, I'm going to bet you were one of the lower percentages, right? You ran into it and you went, oh boy. You didn't anticipate supply chain issues. You didn't anticipate what I call socioeconomic changes on the purchaser, right? If you look at consumers, this is what I've been telling people, so I'm going to break this down. If we look at Amazon prior to COVID, Amazon was where people shopped. And there was one reason that they shopped there. It wasn't because it was a great website or it was glamorous. They shopped there because it was fast and it was convenient. Those were the big things that drove that. People were so preoccupied with everything else they were doing in their life, they didn't have time to go to the store. They don't have time to shop around. They just had to hit the button and have it show up a couple days later. What COVID did, which was very interesting, was set it up where people really had time and patience. So what they would do now is say, okay, I'll go to Amazon, but since I'm here, why don't I check out the manufacturer, check out another company, look at other options? It gave people an understanding that there are many options out there. Now, I'm not saying Amazon is going to slow down by any stretch of the imagination. That thing's a beast. But I think companies that realize that people shop now. We were preparing prior to that in a direct-to-consumer space concept of ads on social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, in other countries. How do you interact with your customer? What are you providing? If you were prepared and you were already moving along, you saw leverage off that in the salesman, right? The other thing is depending on what space you're in. We're in the nutrition, health, and wellness space. Prior to COVID, we were wondering, okay, what's the next delivery method? What's the next hot product? COVID hits, everybody, man, we've been practicing 29 years for that thing because it hit and the products were there and they're ready to go. So it comes down to lessons learned. Were you prepared and could you go? There's no way for any of us to anticipate what's next, but I think the most important item we learned is that how you interact with your customer, right, is one of the most important things. Why you instead of someone else? What's the story? What's the narrative that you can tell your consumer in a short period of time or provide an experience that will make them want to buy from you? That's a key thing. And then also continuing to innovate and remain agile. I think one of the toughest things is, and there are going to be companies I think that are going to go through this. You're going to see this success. You're going to stick with what you're doing. You're not going to think innovation. You're not going to think what happens next. And it's going to create issues because the world, it's a dynamic marketplace. It doesn't sit still. So you have to look at those things. And I think it's tougher for larger companies not to sit and enjoy the success because it's the old phrase, right? It's still true to this day. It's harder to turn a battleship than a speedboat. I mean, it takes a while. But if your team can work and think of agility and innovation and have that flexibility to move, it will really make a difference. And, having to look 2 years out might almost be too far. I think you've got to start to look at, things are changing on a global basis. We don't know what's going to happen with different countries and what you've got to prepare for those things and think about, okay, what do we do if, or what do we do when? How are we ready? And is the team ready to adapt to that? Because, you can create lists till you're blue in the face of priorities and things you want to do. Yeah. But if you keep that list static, if you're a box checker, you're going to run yourself into some issues. You've got to have that ability to go, you know what? Maybe this item isn't applicable anymore. And I know we've spent time and money on it, but we've got to pass on this and move to something new because the marketplace has surpassed that priority. I don't know if that answers.
I agree.
There was a lot there. So
there's a lot there, and I'd love to dig into on a couple of those items, especially. So I agree as well. It's really difficult now to look too far down the road. Plans would probably be irrelevant, if you're making 5 or 10 year plans. And so I do think it's important that, at least at the annual, the quarterly, you've got solid strategies and plans in place that you can kind of tap in the right direction, as the market, as consumer tastes shift. And I think one of the things you said is you talked about agility and kind of the if scenario. For those that aren't watching on video, I'm using air quotes here around kind of if something happens. So talk about scenario planning. Is that something that you do? Kind of proactively with your team? Is you might develop 2 or 3 different scenarios of what might happen, and so if something does trigger option A, B, or C, or scenario A, B, or C, that you can jump on it. How do you handle the if in air quotes and scenario planning?
So the biggest thing for us, the best example I can give is the product roadmap, right? So we have a 5-year product roadmap. I'm sure almost everybody has that. What are the plans? Now, you could treat that as a static element and stick to it. That's just what it is. But I'll give you the example. COVID hits, right? Immunity shoots through the roof. We have some other products we're looking at that were further down the roadmap. You have to have that flexibility to say, okay, wait a minute. Let's rethink this because this is where we are today. Can we move it forward or can we move it backward? And does it make sense? There are some other products where perhaps they don't fit into the mix. There are other things that drive that. There's a discussion we're having around a whole new topic, a whole new space that it kind of came up a year ago. And it's one we know we can leverage. We think it's relevant to the marketplace, but it will change that a lot. And that's hard to stomach. But when you look at the entire scenario or opportunity, it makes sense. And what I think is key to that is in anything, even if it's a launch strategy, you've got to look at where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish and have that ability to say, okay, stop, hit the pause button, let's rethink this timeline, rethink what we're doing, and be able to make those changes. Now that can be tough. If you think of a company of, we're 1,100 people here, the ripple effect of that is huge. But it's what is the return that's going to come from that decision. So I think that drives the what ifs, and we run through those scenarios regularly. I mean, weekly is probably an aggressive statement, but at least monthly, we're talking about that. Okay, what if this happens? Do we have a backup plan? And then the team is always thinking that way, so that if all of a sudden you're working on a project, someone pulls the plug, you're not upset. You realize, okay, there's another opportunity that brought itself up.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably the opportunity, or the scenario or strategy that they were working on, that can be put on the shelf as well. So it doesn't end up necessarily on the cutting room floor. Yeah. It can be sitting there on the shelf ready to be pulled off in, a different scenario that comes down the road from a strategy standpoint. I agree as well that even larger companies now have to be more and more agile, more flexible. When at the beginning of 2020, I was at a large health and wellness company, and I was really actually proud of how quickly the company shifted just to focus on product line. So just, having a lot of our marketing, our advertising, our communications shift to focus on kind of our home care, the product line that was really focused around making sure your home was as clean and safe as it possibly could. There was a huge amount of demand that ended up around that product line. And had we stuck with, our original annual plan, we would have missed a lot of that. And so I do think the ability, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got to rush a new product to market. It could just be, a shift of priorities, a shift in what you're communicating and promoting and focusing on. And for us, that was really important for our distributors and our members. But surprisingly, again, I was at a large, company similar to where you're at. And the company pivoted pretty quickly. But again, we had to, you were forced to, but so I think building in that agility, kind of having that muscle memory around that flexibility. And I think a lot of it is cultural as well. As you mentioned, like, don't get upset if something changes. Like, of course you're going to be working on something, demands, dynamics are going to shift. But again, I like the idea of kind of setting some of those on the shelf, that it's, dry powder for whenever you need it, down the road a little bit. So obviously you're really in touch with the consumers, with the distributors. So you gather a lot of those insights, you get a lot of the feedback, most of your marketing is going to obviously based on kind of their needs, wants, and desires. So what are you doing as CMO? How do you see the CMO role within USANA as far as kind of driving some of these changes, recognizing these dynamics, looking around the corner to see what's coming next? How does that impact your role?
One of the interesting things is, and people sometimes get confused by my title, right? What's a CCMO? And I will tell you, several years ago, we were structured where we had a chief communications officer and a chief marketing officer. And where we ran into some issues was they're both talking to the same people. And whether it's not necessarily you have differing opinions, it's how is it being done and what is effective. What we decided when we made a change was to combine those two jobs together. And I love it. I'll tell you why, because every single touch point with a customer sourced through one group, right? So we're working together. So you have the communications aspect, whether it's PR, social media, internal, external communications, investor relations. It's all going together with your marketing, your creative events teams. We also layered in customer service. Customer service talks to more of your customers than anyone within the company.
Yeah.
They know what's happening. When you put those three groups together, you have the opportunity to get information, and you can make data-driven and quality-driven decisions because you have everything available to you at every angle. You're not getting third party, and it's not getting flowed through, a number of people. It's proven to be very beneficial to the company in the way that we've interacted with our customers and our associates, our employees, everybody. It just created this seamless line of connection. I will tell you, one of the things that helps drive the changes is, being passionate about what you're talking about and sticking to it, right? Because I can take this back many years, social media, when that first started to come across and was never really a discussion point at companies, it was one, a few people in my team and I all felt very passionate about it. You could see this was building momentum. And we had to really, I guess, fight's a tough word. I would say really push hard to get that group developed, to hire the people to focus on it. But look what it's become. Now, you could argue there's other decisions like that that aren't as successful. But if you're passionate about it and you stick to it, that's the key. And then the other thing I will stress, and this is in countless books, if you start to feel a little uncomfortable about it, you're probably heading in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Because if you're just feeling good, you're doing the same thing. If you ruffle the feathers a little bit, you're probably heading down the right path. That's a key one. And the other one is hiring exemplary employees, and hire them for a reason and let them do their job. I think that's one of the toughest things that I've seen is you come through the ranks and you've experienced those positions, is trying to go back and micro the decision making because you did it before. You hire somebody to do the job, let them do the job. And that's really something that we've been stressing, because you're hiring people. That's what they do on a daily basis. They interact differently. They have different experiences around that subject matter. That's something that is key. And then the last thing I'll tell you is really this kind of layers on top of these is watching for trends and activities. Like I said, incorporating all those elements together, including customer service, allows us to track what's the feedback coming direct from our customer. And that's unique for us, because think of the retail channels. Retail, they don't really have a direct contact to their customer unless somehow they sign up for something and you know exactly what they bought. More like a Costco type experience where they can track you down if there's a recall. But if you think about our unique ability in our space to have a direct line to our customer and be able to have those conversations, the customers, like you were talking about, Wayne, new products. Customers, they'll tell you what they want. Hey, why don't you guys make this? Hey, why don't you look at this? And if you get enough of those starting to stack on each other, there's a trend developing. And I think that's really an opportunity that I don't know that everyone leverages enough, is to understand that unique perspective and that ability we have to interact with those customers.
Those are great. There's a lot of wisdom in there for any CMO or marketing individual. I also love what you said around kind of using your comfort level almost as a compass or an indicator whether you're going the right direction. I do think, especially with how fast things are changing, how dynamic the market is today, you need to constantly be pushing into new territories, new ways of thinking. You need to constantly be on the cusp of some type of evolution, whether it's incremental or all the way to significant. But yeah, I think that's a great indicator. If you're sitting at your desk one day feeling comfortable, you might not be doing enough or worrying about enough that's coming down the road. I love that. I also think it's really wise that you combined communications in the marketing department. I think a lot of companies are realizing now how many of the roles, the functions should be folded under marketing. I think another one is actually kind of the chief digital officer. And, sorry for any of the chief digital officers that are that are listening right now. I think it was a role that was really needed. I think when a lot of the technology was new, obviously on the back end, IT and the role they play around the systems, the infrastructure is significant. As a marketer, I don't want to touch that. I don't care. As long as the thing works, that's my primary responsibility. I want to focus more on the front end. But I think that the chief digital role or that kind of digital marketing role, a lot of it is folding into the CMO and the marketing organization. And if it's not, it should be. If you're not a digital marketer these days as a CMO, you're light years behind. And having all those communications being integrated and consistent, I think makes them so much more effective. I have seen when there are these, split out departments where, product is owned by one person and comms by one and marketing by one and digital by one. And the consumers and the distributors are not getting consistent messaging. The campaigns aren't aligned. It can get really messy really fast. So I do think the CMO role is evolving so quickly and more is going to be folded under it. which is good and bad because again, I think it can be more effective, but it puts us as marketers in the hot seats, which probably speaks to why the tenure of the CMO is the shortest among the C-suite.
I think another thing you can add in there too, Wayne, is reputation management.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of people coming up with a chief reputation management officer. If you're not folding that into your marketing and communications, the way that people think of your brand, that's a miss. And if you have that running its own path and it doesn't line up with what's the main narrative of the company, I don't know how you manage that brand. We have the digital in ours. We have the reputation management. It all folds into this. And it's not necessarily creating room at the top. It's more of how does this integrate to your existing structure where you have a consistent message.
Absolutely. And I'd love to dig into the reputation management a little bit more in a second, but you're right. I think, every touch point, again, on the, customer facing, public facing is impacting your reputation. And so much of what impacts reputation today additionally is the content that the marketing team, that the digital team, that the comms team is going to be developing. So if it's not integrated, if it's not all working together, it's going to be a total mess and balls are going to get dropped. So I totally agree there. You mentioned customer a lot in there. And I want to kind of drill a little bit deeper on some of your thoughts around the customer. That has been, I think, one of the biggest shifts over the last few years in direct selling. I think that direct selling companies looked at their role as, hey, let's just keep distributors happy. Distributors are going to keep customers happy. And we had very little interaction with the customer besides, the occasional call into customer support, which again, I love that it's in the marketing department because I do think it's one of the most important and oftentimes overlooked touch points with the customer. But now we have the ability to connect with the consumer in ways that we never thought possible. As we're out doing PRs, we're out doing organic social, pay-per-click, search, all these things are impacting the customer experience, our brand pages on Amazon. What are the shifts that you're seeing and how are you and USANA kind of shifting that focus a little bit to not forget the distributor? Again, they are the foundation of the entire channel, but to partner with them a little more closely to make sure that the customer experience is exceptional and also, I think, customer acquisition. Can you talk a little bit about today's customer and what you and USANA are doing to address that new shift?
Yeah, and the first thing I'll address exactly what you said. The company wouldn't be where it is today without our associates. Yeah. When we talk about the customer, we in no way are saying that we aren't worried or looking at or concerned about our associates. And we actually went down the path of saying, well, everyone's a customer. Even if you're an associate, you're technically a customer. But to process that in one's mind, there is separation. And that's years of the industry referring to customers and associates. They're not just one. Mm-hmm. That became a tough discussion point with our associates because they said, you don't care about us. And that's absolutely not true. They are the life and blood of the company. But when we look at their business, they have customers too. So we said, okay, let's talk about this in two ways, but understanding that the basic principles that we're talking about go across the board. So there are separate discussions that we have from an associate perspective, talk about business building tools, ways to attract customers, those types of things. But what you're asking from a customer's perspective, the thing that we found, and this goes back to the earlier discussion, is about kind of around Amazon. Customers they're all about convenience, personalization. Those are probably two of the biggest things that are coming out there. What's being either marketed direct to me because I'm interested in it, it's relevant to me. How soon, how fast can I get it? Is it something I can regularly get and I don't have to worry about it? For us, health is something that people right now, of course, care very deeply about. And then the final thing I think that's big from any customer or associate is the quality and safety behind the product they buy. And I'll give you an example that's not related to anyone in our industry, but there's a shampoo out there that is going through a big lawsuit because there was some discussion of hair loss because of formaldehyde, formaldehyde.
Maybe that was my issue. Maybe that's why I went bald.
I think we all went through it. Actually, ironically, and I bring this up, my daughter is one of those people. She
oh, really?
started losing her hair and we couldn't figure it out. We were like, we don't know what's going on. So we shifted to another brand, right? We just figured, okay,
Yeah.
start over. This comes out a year later, and you're like, oh my gosh, okay. The quality, safety, reputation discussion around that is going to be a long road for them. What you have to do is when you're looking at your customers, make sure you're investing in the quality of your product, the safety of the product, and the efficacy of the product. If you're going to short run this thing and try to just make some money and put something out there, it'll come back to get you. There's no question. It's investing in that and that in and of itself, the quality of the product. The second thing is when you look at the shopping experience or the enrolling experience, put yourself in your customer or your associate's shoes. If you are shopping or if you are enrolling, is it easy to do? Right? You should be able to grab one of your teenagers and go buy something or go enroll in this company. And it should be that easy. No, nothing. It shouldn't be difficult. Making it difficult, that not only makes it difficult for the person enrolling, it makes it difficult for the person who's trying to help them through that or shopping. If you're getting a lot of calls in your call center that say, why can't I change my order? Why can't I do this? You're not providing a seamless, clear and concise process that people can easily do. It's a barrier to business. That's what I call them, barriers to business. The other thing that we've done too is we've invested in personalization, right? We look at how can we create something that's catered to an individual. Now we're health and wellness products. That's almost easier to do than some other products. But think of this too. If you are doing targeted ads, keyword searches, are you trying to appeal to the customer who is interested in your product or who would be searching for your product? And this is an interesting one because you have a lot of companies who buy keywords or look at keywords that are very specific to your company, right? Your company name. You got to think of the people you're shopping as a funnel. And if someone is at the top of the funnel, they're in sort of that investigatory level. They're looking at, I want to go out there and see and search what's going on. They dig a little deeper. When someone starts identifying key elements of a product, whether it's an ingredient, whether it's a function, whether it's a specific element of a product, they're now interested. Push those keyword searches down. Don't worry about the brand. The brand, you're going to handle it. That's the manufacturer. I call it the manufacturer. That's the home office's job, is to build the brand so people can look. But as they dig deeper, they get further down that funnel. That's where you start to attract people. That's where you start to get that personalized interaction where now they're interested. Can you provide that value to get them to make the purchase? And if you can, your ROI is going to be higher. We have this discussion with the distributors on a regular basis. Don't worry about the brand. You're too high up in the funnel. Push yourself down. And it's the same way if you think back, this is years of direct sales training. It is a funnel. We bring all the people in and a certain amount come out the bottom. Where would you rather start? At the top, where there's just a sea of people, or more targeted a little lower down? So I think that customers are looking for that. I'm going to use an example just to point at myself. There's certain things I do around the house that, yard work and things, and I get ads that come in that are targeted to what I'm searching for, what I'm doing. And gosh darn it, sure enough, if I don't buy the darn things because it's right there in front of me and you're like, gosh, I actually need that, and so but it's further down and I don't even know the brand name. I don't even know it. You have to get it down. And it's usually directly from the company. It's not Amazon. It's not whatever, Alibaba in China. It's not any giant search. It's direct. So I think if we look at the customers and how they're shopping, that's what they're looking for. What appeals to me directly? Can I get it? Is it easy to get? Convenient? Is it easy to purchase online? All of those things, clear, concise, all those elements play a key role in today's customer.
Man, you said so much, so many great things in there. I was kind of frantically taking notes on a few that I want to circle back on and dig in a little bit deeper. So there definitely has been and continues to be a debate around, the company's role in managing the customer experience. So again, as we mentioned, it used to be, hey, let the distributors, keep the customers happy. But to your point of looking at it in a funnel and kind of, the brand being at the top of the funnel all the way down to conversion and loyalty, we as the company can have a huge impact, a much greater reach on the awareness around positioning the brand, around helping people become kind of problem aware, before they become solution or brand aware, which again, I think that's where the distributor can come in. And I also feel like we can partner with the distributors to really help drive their sales volume. And I'll kind of share a little bit more what I mean by that. But part of that is an education process and kind of a cultural shift with the distributors to help them understand, this isn't channel conflict. We're not trying to take commissions or sales away from you and change the model of our business. We're just trying to work with you to drive additional sales volume within your organization to make your checks bigger. And I think some of the ways we can do that again is targeting their customers. So again, even if it's from, a performance marketing or marketing automation around email, that if one of their customers buys product A, and we know that there's, 75% attachment rate to product B when people buy A, like, let's go ahead and tee up a campaign. Let's tee up a message for them. If again, they have abandoned a cart, a product in their cart when they visit the website, let's tee up a campaign. Let's tee up a communication to them to remind them and say, oh, you left this. We get it every day. We get these emails in our inbox every day. It's not like it's anything we're not used to. But again, all that is doing is helping to drive more sales volume for the distributor, that's above them, in the organization. And so I think it's really important to help educate the distributor that, look, we are just partnering with you. We're not trying to replace you. But there is so much that we can do right now to drive additional sales volume that I think it's important that all of the companies that we're working with our distributors to understand that and developing those skills and muscle memory around, customer loyalty, increasing the AOV and the LTV of any customer order. Any thoughts around that debate? I know you kind of maybe showed your hand where you fall on that topic, but any additional thoughts on that, on how we can work with the distributors to help them overcome that perceived channel conflict?
I loved what you said because it lines up perfectly with the way I've been looking at things and we've been looking at things. I'm going to liken it back to my discussion around a car manufacturer. If you go out and you look at cars, you start researching, you pick a brand. If you buy that brand, right? Our job is to build the brand. That's the home office job. That's the car manufacturer's job. Make the connection, build the story, get you excited about it. Once you come in and make the purchase, you've now connected yourself to an associate. We still look to the associates to build and nurture the relationship as if they're running, because they are running their business, We want to make sure they do that. But the reality is associates don't stay forever. We'd love them to. Some of them leave, some don't. I mean, the relationships get fractured. But if you think of that, once you've purchased a car, the manufacturer still keeps in touch with you, sends you brochures, sends you coupons, incentives. They maintain a relationship. They're providing incremental value. If anything happens to the organization that the associates enrolled in or the customers enrolled in, they still have a connection point. The biggest disconnect comes when someone is brought into the business, they buy the product, and no one ever talks to them again. What we've done is we're expanding the relationship of providing that incremental value to the customer or associate during the life of their purchase. Yes, it's predictive analytics to anticipate what their next purchase should be. It's keeping in touch with them if they've missed an order. Why did you miss it? What's going on? How can we work with you? It's having a relationship with the company. That way, if anything ever happens, the company steps in and says, okay, we're going to help manage the relationship, but they're still connected to an associate somewhere within the organization. You don't fracture that piece. If you fracture that piece, if I'm a business builder, I think back when I had a business, if somebody stepped in and took it from me, I'd be, well, quite frankly, very angry. But if you're going to help build the relationship that if I pause my business for 4 months and I come back and you're still in there, I jump right in. It's seamless. No beat's been missed because the company
I'd be appreciative. As a distributor that my contacts and market was still warm for sure.
And that's the discussion that I have with associates who have concerns about where we step in. That's the exact conversation. Think about somebody who needs to pause their business. They've got a life event, or they're just not, head's not in it, whatever, but they still want to keep their distributorship. They just want to take a break. Okay. There's still a relationship there, and you haven't lost your customer. There's still things flowing through your business. At some point, when you do get re-engaged, you haven't skipped a beat. Jump in, reconnect, and you're good to go. And that's the same thing. You buy the car, even if you don't own the car anymore, you trade it in. Manufacturer still sells you stuff for a period of time to try to get you back.
Right.
And that's kind of where we look at it. And I only use that analogy because that's one of the things that I kind of brought over here, was that dynamic relationship that you had. And it's become one where it's working together, not just to attract customers, because as we go out and we send those out, your brand reputation, brand building, that makes it easier. If you mention it, or you're walking around in your logo shirt and somebody says, oh my gosh, I think I got something in the mail, or I got an email about that, or I saw that on social media. It's a door opener. We're really, again, this goes back to a comment made earlier. We're in this together. We're not trying to take someone's customers away. It's not our job. Our job is to build the brand and make it something that is attractive, and make it something that's easy for people to talk about so that they'll want to be part of it.
I love that analogy. Again, I think it's really, really close in. Something I'm going to steal, if that's okay, and use in the future. Take it. So would you say that, as you continue to interact and communicate more with the customers, has the general sentiment among your associates and distributors been positive? Do they understand that it is a partnership, that you're trying to help, or, has it been more of a process in educating and bringing all of them along?
I will say it's been a process over several years, right? This could go back many years. We started a relationship with Dr. Oz, the health doctor, with a show 10 years ago. And they wanted to talk about our products, which was obviously going to drive people to our website, right? It would. We had to sit with our top leaders, and we had a discussion, and we said, okay, you're going to see them come in. We're going to show you that anything that comes in, you get, as long as you do these certain things, you'll be in this pool, you'll get these leads. And they saw that. It was an open discussion. We tried some other things, some win-back campaigns, but we had an open discussion up front. Here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're trying to do it. And here's how it's going to help you. But stressing the things that you will never be undercut on a price perspective. We'll not take your customers. That's not the job here. But as we acquire new ones, we will put them into the organizations. It's a partnership. And I think as you go, there's slow steps, right? But you have to earn the trust of the associates that you are not stepping in. There's not a move to go DTC only, right? You're working together. And we've really built that relationship and exemplified it is a partnership. And it's made a difference. They're seeing their organizations grow. It's easier for them to have conversations around the brand or the products because they're seeing it in more places. It just becomes, it's a working partnership. But it's not something that flips overnight. You've got to earn that respect and that trust.
Yeah. I love that you talk about earning their respect and their trust. I think that's important as well. If you had just dropped these initiatives on them, without communicating, without partnering, without holding hands kind of ahead of time, it could have been disastrous, and had significant, revenue implications. So I do think kind of developing that trust over time, and once they see that when they grow, you grow, at the corporate side, and what's good for them is really good for you. They're going to be more likely to support those types of initiatives. But it's interesting that it has taken a while. So what else is USANA doing from, and maybe this will be the last question kind of as it relates to the customer, but what has changed over the last few years? You've talked about some win-back campaigns. You've talked about, some of the paid social ads and things like that you're doing. What else is USANA doing to really kind of establish that relationship with the customer? Do you have dedicated positions now that are responsible for the customer experience and the customer journey? What are some of those important kind of shifts that USANA has made that others can learn from in becoming a little bit more customer centric and again, partnering with those associates to do so?
Some I'll tell you, some I won't. No.
Okay. Yes. Again, only what you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah,
and then after recording, I'll pay you $5 to tell me the rest of the stuff too.
The number one thing that we've really done is we've gone into much more survey-driven discussions with our associates and our customers. Now, this isn't saying our customers who are buying today. Like, I'll give you an example. I asked the question. I said, okay, I want to know who is our most loyal customer. In 29 years, who has been buying the most products on a regular basis? And I'd like a list of that. And I got a list of about, I think I capped it at 20 people, right? They've been buying for over 25 years. Like, that's a long time to buy a product regularly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said, you know what? I want to have a focus group, me personally, a focus group with that group on Zoom. And I want to do it as soon as we can. So we invited these folks to be on the call. We got several of them to attend. And it was fascinating to listen to what they had to say. They've been buying, they're the most loyal customers. And we asked them questions. You know, if you were the CEO for a day, what would you do differently? If you were looking to bring out a product, any product you possibly could, what would you do? And what it came down to, very interesting enough, in that particular group, it had nothing to do with any of the things we were looking at. Like, in your mind right now, you're probably going, oh my gosh, they all want free shipping. Never came up. You want lower prices? Never came up. We want this super product? Nothing. The number one thing that they said they wanted was communication. They wanted to know what's new, what's going on, what are some health benefits, what are things totally unrelated to what path we were marching down. Now, these are people who've been buying for 25 years. So something's up, right? But it was interesting because it validated the customer relationship aspect. They wanted a connection to the company. So I said, okay, that's great. Let's back that thing down. Now let's look at a different pocket. People have been customers 5 to 10 years. Now there's a lot of those, right? I mean, there's hundreds of thousands. I said, I would like 20 from around, English speaking around the world. Let's pick them. So we put them on a call, Zoom call, focus group, same questions. Few differences, but in general, same thing. And what we found is if you start to ask these groups, you can validate. Now that's a different way of doing it. First of all, the customers were a little surprised because you get an invitation from the chief communications and marketing officer to be on a focus group call. Like, well, I don't know what this is about and why do I want to be part of it? It took some back and forth discussions with them no, I really just want to hear your input. And I never said a word. I listened. I asked the questions, but I never said any response. It was not it's true focus group. Let me get your input. And they would play off each other. But it's interesting if you could take the time to do that. And I bring that up because I think one of the more things that you do differently, and that is an example of it, is put yourself in the customer's shoes. In other words, let the customer tell you. They're the people that are interacting with your company. If you're trying to change the dynamic, change the narrative, change it, you better make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Because I can tell you, you talk to 20 people in a building about an idea or a concept, you're going to get 20 different answers. Very rarely does everybody go, oh, this is the answer, unless someone's already told you. But if you can get everyone to sit there and listen, it will direct you in the right path. Then lean on your analytics, your surveys, your data that you've got, internal data on purchases, conversion tracking. A lot of CMOs, one of the things I would recommend that has been fantastic for us is to go back and look at conversion tracking. Every single page we put out, whether it's social, online, email, any interaction, did it convert to a sale? Did anyone even look at it? Because one of the things that I know we all do is we start to build these warehouses of data for our associates to use, and it's overwhelming. And if we have time, I'm going to give you one example. We were doing these product videos, and we got a request from a market outside the US. We said, we really need that video. That's going to help us. We're going to sell a ton. We had to make it, edit it, translate it, distribute it, the whole thing, whole shooting match. Got downloaded once, right? Now, a lot of work, a lot of money went into this thing. I got downloaded once. One person asked for it, and one person got it. I said, okay, so can we take that down? No one's downloaded. Well, you never know. Somebody might use it. I said, well, okay, you never know, but they're not. And I have got bigger things that we can do that will get you a better return, but you got to let that go. Sure. And it was a hard discussion. And until you can literally get a conversion tracking to show something is effective or not effective, you're wasting time and you're wasting money. But that's listening to the customer, but also using the data to qualify a decision on it.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I love that, your first answer was data, and analytics. I think that you're right. We tend to collect or have groups and organizations that collect lots of data, and it doesn't get used as insights. It just gets stored somewhere. I think to justify that, hey, we've got data, we're collecting, we're looking at it, but we're not really wielding it correctly in so many ways. And I think that is a lesson that we can learn from other channels, especially from the D2C channel, where everything they do is driven by analytics. It's driven by data, so that they can go back to, like, when I was at Purple, we had a weekly meeting with the CFO and the CEO where we justified the ROAS of everything we did. So we could go back to them and say, okay, you gave us $1, and for every dollar you gave us, we gave you back $5. And we talked through the different campaigns that were working, what wasn't working. And so I think being able to dig into the data and the analytics and understand what is actually impacting the experience, the decision-making process, whether it's a distributor sign up or a customer conversion. Again, I think we also don't talk about customer conversions enough. I mean, that should be something that we're tracking literally daily, almost minute by minute, and making adjustments to our marketing and our campaigns based on that, and reallocating resources, ad spend and marketing spend to what we feel is working. And that, I think, is going to be a big shift and a little bit of a wake-up call for, I think, a lot of CMOs and marketers in direct selling is, it can't be just gut and, a couple distributor leaders wanted us to do A, B, or C. Like you said with the product video, you can go back to that market now and say, the next time they have a similar request, you can say no, because we know exactly, how effective or engaging that piece of content was. I love that you started there. And I also love that you talked about, not just the quantitative, but also the qualitative, digging into focus groups, digging into the surveys, with our members and customers, because I think oftentimes, what we say and what we do are two very different things. And so being able to dig in with your associates and customers around beliefs and perceptions around, needs versus wants. I think that's really important insight too, that can really guide, product strategy and so much of your marketing. So, incredible. You also mentioned Dr. Oz. So I'd love to kind of shift into talking about brand ambassadors. So, a brand ambassador program has been really one of the pillars of USANA marketing for as long as I can remember. Especially around, let's start with kind of the athlete program. And side note for all the listeners, your children are pretty serious competitors. Am I understanding that right?
I've got, my 3 daughters are all on the US ski team. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Where did they grow up skiing? Which mountain?
Here. Oh, Park City. Yeah,
Park City. Okay.
They're 3 in 3 different disciplines. I got a ski jumper, an alpine racer, and a mogul skier. So
wow. That's incredible. Well, you obviously did something right. So congratulations and good luck to them and all their competitions. That's really cool. So talk a little bit about the athlete program. Again, USANA isn't specifically designed for athletes, but yet, so I'm sure it was more of kind of a positioning play around, taking an extreme use case, like a professional athlete, and saying, hey, if it's, if the products are effective enough to help them, in their performance and their competition, it's going to be effective enough for kind of the average person. How has that program fared? Again, it's been, as I mentioned, kind of a pillar and been a longstanding part of your campaign. Can you talk a little bit about the program, what's been effective, and maybe some things that you would kind of jettison from that?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And it's been, when I came to USANA about 15 years ago, it was something that, you're right, it had been around for quite some time. It goes back to an original comment about building a product that was high quality, very safe, very effective. And the company had kind of come up with $1 million guarantee around athletes because they knew the quality was there. They knew the safety. And they knew that when you look at athletes in general, one of their toughest things is testing. If you test positive for contaminants, you can jeopardize your own career or the career of your teammates. And when I came in, I saw that as an opportunity. And you think about the tour that I mentioned, right? I was like, holy cow, people need to know about this. And this is a story. Well, it's a story we chose to latch onto. And back at the time, we had, I think, 3 teams, like US Speed Skating, Canada Biathlon, I can't remember. There were 3. We're now up around almost 5,000 professional Olympic athletes worldwide who take our products in
Wow.
many teams. And it's because they can't risk that. And we have this history through athletes of providing the right products that meet their needs. And it gave a narrative. It did drive us. We do actually have products specific to athletes on those programs for obvious reasons. And it's really become something, because even if you're a weekend warrior, you're going out and you're going to ride your bike for 25 miles through the mountains, you want to put in your body what's fueling athletes. That's just kind of how it is. And that was one of those marketing stories where he said, that's a stake in the ground. We can build on this, and we build on it on the quality of the product, not the dollars that you pay someone to say you have a great product. Because what drives that recognition and that belief is the athletes talking about it. I can tell you right now, if I told you what we've spent on it, you'd be shocked. You'd hit the floor. There's no way you can do that. Well, yes, you can do it, and it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. What you do is you provide a high quality product that they believe in, and they tell the others. We get calls constantly from other teams, organizations, and individuals. And it starts out with money. And I'm like, well, you called the wrong place. I said, if you want products, I'll give you the products. I'm not giving you money. That's not how it works. And they're shocked, right? Because, well, you have an opportunity to have this person. I go, okay, fine. Do you want the products or not? And I do that because that is the stake in the ground for me personally in this concept around influencers, athletes, and ambassadors. It's product use, number one, product belief. You've got to have those two things. It's not money, period. We will pay some registration fees, or we'll pay to move equipment for some folks, or we'll pay to have them speak at events, but we're not going out there buying all these names. Think about it, 5,000 professional athletes and Olympic level athletes out there. You'd go broke. There's no way. So it's product. But what they do is they talk to each other. And that's key. When athletes talk to athletes, they want to know what's doing that. And when we looked at the last Winter Olympics, if you took my USANA athletes as a country, we would have been number one in the world in medal count, because we're fueling the right athletes. And we have that success, and that success builds on itself. And we're
you couldn't pay for that. You're right. I mean, at that level of competition, at that level of winning, I mean, if it was just pure kind of pay to play, it would be an extraordinary amount of money.
Yeah, but that was also a unique niche that at the time, you got to go back to 2007, was an open. No one had cornered it. No one had thought about it. No one had really invested in it. That's the route we chose to take. And the associates loved it, because it's about being healthy, active lifestyles. It fits in perfectly with the USANA message. But pull the athletes aside. If you look at influencers and brand ambassadors, it's the same thing. We're not going after celebrity endorsements or influencers, because I remember sitting in a meeting one time, this goes years back. And so I said, why don't you just give Kim Kardashian $500,000 to put a tweet out and you'll sell a pile of product? I said, did you hear what you just said? That doesn't jive with me. That doesn't work. That's the wrong message, and that's not who we are. And I think the key thing in this is knowing who you are. You can sell products doing that. You absolutely can. That's not the long-term play. That's the short-term play. The long-term play is to have the high-quality product. Choose the influencers and the ambassadors and athletes who take the product, believe in the product, let them share the message, and then let your associates share their message. Those things together, they work hand in hand. And when you see it passed on social media, and I see it, I'm very proud of when I see it. That's probably a strange word. Why am I proud? Because I know that person did it on their own volition.
Yeah, I think you made a really important distinction there around, the success of the ambassador influencer program is going to be contingent on knowing who you are. I came into a company one time, just kind of as a personal example, won't name the company. And in my first couple of days was meeting with the team that was managing the brand ambassador program. And as they walked me through the spend, which was incredible, like incredible in a bad way. They were spending a lot of money on the ambassador program, and the ambassadors were, I would say, from kind of a categorization or positioning, they were all over the place. There was no common threads, and none of them even came close to representing I think, who the customer is, or, some extreme use case around the benefits to that customer, similar to the athlete program. And so literally on day 2, I was like, we're not renewing any of these relationships next year. Let's all get together and take a step back and really help kind of define the program. I think one of the important distinctions that came out of that as well is understanding the difference between an ambassador and an influencer. And it may be semantic, but one of the things that we did is an ambassador, a brand ambassador, is going to have more of an official relationship with the company and a longer term relationship with the company. An influencer is someone that, it's a much shorter relationship, but that it is important to have them as a subject matter expert in whatever pillar or field they're in. We looked at the verticals. For example, at Young Living, I'll use that as an example. As we were developing this program, we looked at what are the different pillars that we want from an influencer standpoint. We don't just want reach for reach sake or awareness for awareness sake, but it really needs to help position the brand and build the brand in an appropriate way. So we created 4 verticals, essentially saying, we were home, we were health and wellness, we were beauty, and we were business. And we used that as the criteria to go out and identify what type of influencers that we would go after, and they needed to fit, in one of these 4 pillars, or we knew that really they weren't right for us, and it became really successful. And I think the other way, that's kind of the vertical, axis of that discussion, and the horizontal axis, if you go kind of bottom to top, of course you have customers out there that you want to be evangelists and sharing the product, socially and word of mouth, and then there's the distributors, above that, which of course, within their own circle of influence in their own right, or kind of micro influencers, and then getting up more into, that kind of macro influencer level where you're going to have maybe 100,000 or more followers. And then above that would be the brand ambassador. But I think that people kind of confuse those two quite a bit. And it can be confusing for distributors. It can be confusing for customers. And so I think you need to be, careful about how you select each of those. But again, they're for very different reasons, very different purposes. And again, I think kind of the length of that relationship or how official it is important. So shifting into kind of the last couple of things, you've mentioned brand reputation a couple of times as being really important to USANA. Certainly as a public company, that is vital, to operate, to keep the share price high, and to the channel as a whole. Obviously there potentially, we're all aware, can be a certain stigma around people that don't understand the channel well, around media outlets that don't understand those subtle nuances. What have you had to do? What have you found most effective in this era where anyone can post comments, anyone can post content? How do you manage, the brand reputation in such a kind of wild world that we're living in now?
Man, that's a good question. I think one of the bigger things for us, and this kind of started with the Oz relationship, if I could put a timeline on it, because there were so many restrictions on what could be said, what you could post, because Sony owns his name, owns his show, and their attorneys really came at us. And we said, okay, that's fine. It goes back to the relationship with your associates and the people that you have. If you're having an open discussion and we say, okay, here's the benefit that we'll have if we do this relationship. Here's the risk. If we do this, we risk this relationship. Bringing them in on the discussion is key, your leaders, because they will help monitor the post for you. And I will tell you, to come back, even this 10 years ago, people were posting things they couldn't, and the leaders were calling them out. It was almost self-policing, yes. And we also have an amazing brand and ethics and education department here, where it's part of the training that happens every year. You have to go through it. It's a requirement. It's tough. It's a lot of work. There are other elements too that are there behind the scenes. I call them the social crawlers, the social media aspects that are back there, tracking keywords, tracking things, identifying them as fast as we can, and getting with people. And there's a lot of things you can do. I can tell you, not paying attention to that would be a huge mistake for any company. That our PR element of it plays a huge role here to protect the story of USANA, our employees, our associates, and our investors. Now we're a publicly traded company. That adds in a whole nother element. Because if you look at Wall Street, they rely heavily on online data. It's easy to get. That's where it's at. But if you don't have something there, people won't hear about the amazing things you're doing. They won't know that you're a science-based company. They won't know about all your incredible athletes. They don't know who you are. So PR is defined in my book as more of brand reputation, brand management, brand awareness. Those three elements all play a role in it. The team here, I have a team here that helps through, it's not just press releases, it's awards, right? It's looking at how do you recognize the company for its accomplishments? And it's awards on a global basis, which makes it even more challenging because I've got to make sure that the brand you experience in the United States is the same brand you experience in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan. Pick a country. It's got to be the same, or pick a market rather, excuse me. It's promoting our executives. Who's running this company, right? If I'm an investor, for example, I want to know that your chairman and CEO, who is this person? Who's in charge of driving the ship? You will always see something about that. Our foundation, we are a community and purpose-driven company. What do they do? How are they doing that? All those pieces, our relationship with Dr. Oz, everything. So you have to sift through those, and PR could be a whole nother discussion because that's my favorite piece actually. But is looking at what do people, when they go on and they start searching online, what's the company they see? And a lot of people think, I don't need to do that. I'll just wait to see what happens. I'm telling you right now, something negative will happen. You might have a distributor who does something. Your name is going to get attached to it. You might have a supplier who does something. Your name could be attached to it. You're going to get sucked into these things one way or another. The question is, what is the narrative you want people to walk away with about who your company is?
So it's about being prepared. I mean, honestly, it's balancing the conversation, making sure that you've got kind of the good content to balance and point to. And what did you call it? A formidable defense?
Formidable defense. And the other thing too, and this is going to sound crazy, have a crisis communications plan and work through scenarios. We are always working through scenarios because it keeps everybody sharp. It reinforces the process. And it works. I'm telling you, it works. And our plan, the book is this big. It's here in my office. I mean, that is no small book. It's a huge book.
Yeah.
It's probably 100 pages long, but it defines scenarios. If I'm in a market, I know exactly what to do, who to call, what's the plan. It allows us the opportunity to have a cohesive message go out in a timely manner that will help address it no matter what it is. And there's scenarios you can think through till you're blue in the face, but you should test them. And I recommend you do it to stay sharp. And I recommend that all teams, management teams, they go through some type of media training because you've seen it, you've heard about it. The media have a tendency to just walk through the front door with a camera. Who's the first person they run into and what do they say?
Yeah. And where do you take them? All of that I think is part of the crisis management. If media does walk in the door, what's the conference room? What's the word tracks? Who do you then introduce them to next? I completely agree. And there's actually great templates that people can find. I'm sure you can Google them and find templates, but they are very powerful to have so that, even if you're traveling, if you're in Asia and something happens at HQ, the next person or the next person or the next person can literally just open it up and say, this is what I need to be doing. This is who I need to be involved. These are the steps that we need to take. I do think it's very powerful to have that crisis communication plan kind of ready and done and prepared. And kind of socialized, so it's not collecting dust and, some drawer. That's great that you can reach. That's really impressive that you could reach and grab it, right there off your shelf, so that it's always just, a couple feet away. I'd like to end with kind of a speed round here on just a few kind of final questions that we wrap up, every conversation with. So one, and this is a biggie, I know it's kind of hard to answer. What's the best piece of advice or the most impactful piece of advice you've ever received?
I'm going to give you two because one I just find humorous. The first one was, I was always told once, if you're going through hell, just keep going. Right. And I was like, boy, that summarizes so many things. Don't get stalled out. Just keep going. But the bigger one is, what's the worst thing that someone can say to you? And the answer is no. Because if you don't take those challenges, like let's use Dr. Oz as an example. The worst thing they could have said is no. It doesn't hurt me. you've got to shoot for the moon. You got to go for it. It's the worst thing. I tell my kids that. You want something, just go ask or go get it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen to you? We're always worried. It's the what ifs. We're always worried about what will happen. You got to jump all in.
I love that. Again, it's keeping that perspective. What's the real impact going to be? It's not a big deal. Go take those chances. I think that's really powerful. So what, as a CMO Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at a public company, I'm sure there's a lot of things that keep you up at night. What's kind of the main thing that keeps you up, your main concern?
If I look at it from a concern perspective, my biggest concern is, how's the marketplace going to change? And I know that sounds weird, but we always try to anticipate where it's going to be. And I kind of lay there and I'm like, okay, what happened today in the global economy that might change tomorrow? And it's a very high level thought process on this one, but it's what keeps me up at night. But I'm always trying to guess, okay, what's going to be next? And I think that back to, we had the social media thing, we had PR, Amazon. You've got these major changes and shifts that if you're not prepared for, can just grenade a company this big. That's probably my biggest thing.
That's really interesting. Again, I think that kind of circles back to, the beginning of the conversation, so well, is just being nimble, thinking through scenarios, understanding what dynamics could potentially impact your company and what tailwinds that you can ride. Not just looking for the bad things, to avoid the landmines, but also, what can really give you a boost? What are the cultural things happening that you can leverage to grow? So finally, what gets you up in the morning? How do you stay inspired?
Other than my alarm clock, I'll tell you what gets me up in the morning. I actually, and this is going to sound crazy, I love coming here. Just having the ability to, I'm very fortunate to have the communications, the marketing, the customer service, all those pieces together. Because if you think about it, every single day is different because now we're like, okay, what did we hear? What did we learn? And what are we pushing forward? Or what are we going to launch? There's so much going on and it's all exciting. What would not get me up in the morning is come back to work and go, oh my gosh, I got to do the same thing again. It's just like, you might as well put me in a cardboard box out in the corner. But to me, I come in, this is the longest I've ever sat in my office, is can I get in here and can I go start listening to people and share that enthusiasm? Sometimes I'll come in here with crazy ideas. Some have panned out. Some, even I go, that was crazy. We shouldn't do that. But I've built a culture within the team of, you get up in the morning, whatever, you're taking a shower, you're standing there. What's the craziest thing you think we should do to help us build sales? Bring it in, let's talk about it. Because there's something, if something goes into someone's mind, it doesn't matter whose it is, you can accomplish that. You can do that if you want to. But it's sort of like, I want to get in and just start talking to people and go, okay, what do you think? What's on your mind? What's the thing what are we not trying? I am by no means an expert, but I'm an expert listener. And that's the thing I look forward to the most every day.
That's great. I love that, Dan. And that kind of wraps it up. It's been an hour and a half. I could talk for another couple hours. It's been fun geeking out with you about marketing and communication and brand and strategy. I learned so much. Really appreciate it. I know you're so busy. There's so much on your plate. Thank you for taking the time and tell your girls good luck from all of us. And thanks for all you do for the direct selling channel as a whole. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you, Wayne. Thanks for the time. Great conversation. And yes,
yeah,
I could have talked about this all day. I'm very excited. I'm sitting here, I'm like, so I'm going to run out of here and go make something happen. So thanks again.
Well, let's do it again. Appreciate it, Dan.
You bet. Take care.
Thanks.